Hello, Mike. Good morning. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. It's starting to dawn on me that when we started this project a couple years ago, right? Something like
Mhm.
that, maybe a little longer, uh, that we called it surviving AI, right? Because to me, it's sort of or to me at the time, it was like it's so puzzling and it's so odd and it's I guess it's threatening. That's where survival comes in, right? It threatens the status quo. And I wondered, now we're a couple years in. No, I'm not sure that you ever had that opinion, but I'm curious, how should we reformulate this thought? Are we still as whatever we do in life, surviving this transition or what? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that, given what's happening right now, maybe that title is even more accurate than it used to
Oh,
be.
okay. Well, good
Or
to
or
know. We don't
maybe
have to rebrand.
or maybe it's not gonna be a survival at all, in a kind of like a negative sense. I'm kind of beginning to we are definitely at an end of a runway or an era where a new model comes up. Oh, but it's pretty nice. You can do more. The agents talk better. Better problem solve. Now we are at the stage where people begin to think that, well, the government will have to be involved in every single release. How efficient it's going to be in terms of, like the actual remediation of the potential problems. Probably not at all. So we are kind of getting into the models that, are really dangerous and breathtakingly great at the same time. Uh, so yeah, this we may not survive this because there's already talk about the perfect model, unlocking physics, kind of connecting the dots that perhaps already exist in the current research and the historically, all the math, all the physics, all the chemistry research kind of existing in those papers, and kind of connecting the dots, unlocking it, and kind of, fusion. Maybe it's just gonna small potatoes. It could be something that, it's much bigger. So yeah, I'm kind of a little bit concerned, I have to say.
So you're okay with surviving. We can say we're here to offer survival tips for this new era, I guess.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess.
and the take is, I hope from a humanist perspective or a psychological perspective that you can always strategize. Everything's always going to change anyway, right? So you might as well have a strategy for how you deal with change. And I think still my biggest concern is education, because
Mm,
that foundationally, I still think we should go back to liberal arts education. That seems to me like that was always the winner.
mhm.
Teaching you how to think is better than teaching you facts because
Yeah.
facts will change and if you don't have any ability to discern good and bad facts, well, you just can spin. Same with models, I guess. So I sent you a thing
Mm.
of three blue, one brown, who's one of my favorite YouTube guys, talking to some other guy. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it.
Yeah, I looked at it, yeah,
Oh, okay.
quickly. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so here's two people talking about insolvable math problems now being solved, something like that, right?
Mm.
Because of the power of these models. And when we started this, I think it was just GPT-3 we thought was so miraculous, right? That was such a great model, right? To
Yeah.
to sort of prove that there was something new that wasn't all hype. Um, but in terms of survival, let's we can give ourselves a little bit of a I don't know, maybe a little topic for me because I'm starting to see this as being an issue. Let's call it the Uber issue. I don't know if this is the good idea, but somehow, the disruptive issue is we produce this thing and then everybody gets it for a very, very small price, right? Like we disintermediate some entrench something or other, right? Like you pay this much for electricity, I'm going to sell it to you for half. And so everybody then completely transfers over to the cheap electricity and then they raise their rates. Sorry, is this a new one?
Mm. Mm.
I don't think so, right? It's always been the thing. It's hey, once you have enough people that have to use this thing, then you can start to charge them. And they don't know any better. And I think you could, and I both agree that, boy, I wouldn't go back to coding again. Like, real coding is pretty slow, and I get it. It's easier now, but you're still doing, like, every time. Sorry, I'm behind on our videos because I don't automate it. I have to do it always by hand.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, if I just automated this, obviously I could do it much quicker. But I don't know how, it doesn't make it isn't automatable to my mind, although a lot of it is easier. I still have to do it by hand, is what the point is, but none of it is high value stuff. You see what I mean? So
Hmm.
what I'm afraid of is that the coding people now can only do the low level stuff, right? Like, can only do the stuff that's like just super, patching, fix, you know what I mean? Like, something where the real code fun happens, the LLM can do it a lot easier. I don't know, maybe I'm making that up.
Yeah, I mean that's the conundrum, right? The economy of doing anything, is tough. I mean, you can kind of look at this from, kind of like another example, maybe not from the world of computers, like, rolling a cigar, right? It's kind of a manual process. Probably can be automated, probably very easily. Maybe it already is, right? But you really, I mean, it only makes sense if you are rolling a Cohiba, probably financially, even though probably these people who are actually, the real craftsmen, who can actually do it well, and every cigar is exactly the same way, so, they probably don't see the profits in it. But yeah, I mean, there's probably only, a handful of places, where financially they can afford having a, manual process that makes a product like a cigar, for example, right? So it's kind of the same extends to us. It's coding is great. I guess, if I had to pick, maybe like a, life hobby, right? Or life, like, maybe, for some people it would be painting. For some people, maybe like me, it would be more kind of coding and problem solving with code. But yeah, but now with AI, it would be such a economically kind of invalid occupation or process, right? Because you would be kind of outperformed by pretty much everybody who is using AI. So we are kind of at the stage where this this kind of but there is also areas where this is kind of quite helpful. I mean, we already know that we don't have enough scientists doing research on this and this and that, right? So turbocharging, basic research, is probably something that is positive. So I don't know. It's just it's such a conundrum that we are kind of like transitioning to more and more super intelligence, and people already openly talking about that, right? Like super intelligence, perfect models, perfect AI, perfect, intelligence, right? Whatever that might mean. But there is already talk. So and it's kind of, is it going to be diverted into positives, or is it going to be diverted into negatives? And then, how the world is going to look like in, let's say, 5 years, right? Is it going to be the petting zoo, right? Theory, where we humans are basically, oh, okay, gonna be AI, it's gonna take care of us, or is it gonna be a Skynet scenario where, one way or another, there is going to be kind of like no need for humans.
Well, probably neither, really, because yeah, I don't know. I certainly think that the more, well, here's my physics friend. So just so you know, here's a good
Mhm.
anecdote or something like that, because he's very keen on Claude Mythos or whatever it's called. Is that what it's
Mhm.
called?
Mhm.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, here's a new model, and he said, "Well, I had to judge a physics paper, and he is a physics experimentalist, which I will get to in just a second. So when you build
Mhm.
the stuff, it's different from being a theorist. Let's put it that way, right?
Mhm.
Things in the real world versus whatever, or experiments in the real world. So he's reading this thing, or he was supposed to judge this for a paper. I don't know, whatever people do in his position, and he said it looked fine to me, right? And this is, by the way, business 101, right? That assessments and strategy are still most of the job, if you ask me. Doing
Mm.
stuff would be nice if that was what we really needed, but so just remember, deciding things is a big part of it. Anyway, so he looked at it, looked fine, but he put it through Claude, and Claude found 3 errors. And then he looked up the errors and found that they were indeed errors that they
Mm.
had missed. So in his mind, right now, in the sample size of one, uh, he's a fan, right? Here's something that he himself, an expert in the field, did not see. And
Mm.
that to me is always where we probably as a humanity, you know, write about it, raise our hands. You see what I mean? Like we're like, oh my gosh, that's extraordinary. But the thing that gets lost is what I saw just recently, which is a group of people who built a 3D, let's see, is a 3D full body uh, sonogram. What is those things called? Where
MRI?
they no, no, not magnetic. It's sound. It's the thing they push up against the belly in not a
Oh,
sonogram.
ultrasound.
Ultrasound. So
Mm.
they built a 3D body ultrasound, and when I say they, it's like some guys, right? Like total people from Caltech or whatever, and this other guy who did the video. And it's funny just because it's very nonchalant, like guys getting together and having a band. It's like, oh, we got together and we built a 3D you know scanning device. And so they're showing this setup where they're got a million wires everywhere, and it's exactly like experimental physics, right? It's just a huge
Mm.
mess of a lot of tightened electrical lines that are probably mistightened, and anyway, they're all just putting this thing together, and it's a big tank, and you are basically plunged into it, and it scans you, right?
Mm.
So what made this interesting from our perspective is, oh, that's cool, would be number one, right? Okay,
Mm.
good job, you guys. Number two, who paid for this? Well, it just so happened they interviewed the guy who is the head of Midjourney. And the Midjourney head is like a guy, right? Like the
Mm.
typical tech doofus that's existed for years now, right? Like, oh, I just happen to have all this money now, and I like to make stuff, so I paid for these people to go and make this thing because why not?
Mm.
And to me, that's always the heartening part, is that if AI, and it should allow for people to work less but get more done. That's my utopic version, right? Work
Mm.
less but get more done because they don't need as many, maybe as many micro abilities as they used
Mm.
to, right? Like you don't need an entire accounting department. You might not need an accounting department. You might not
Mm.
need a so-and-so department. You can get rid of a lot of things because the jobs themselves are fairly easily understood. It's like having TurboTax, right, or something, right? Like you don't
Mm.
need to go to H&R Block and talk to somebody. You just answer a whole bunch of tedious questions, and then it's fine-ish. And they own taxation, I guess, is the other fun part, right? Like Intuit has been outsourced as our tax people,
Mm.
that we have to pay them to do our taxes, which it's a whole other topic. But so I only brought it up because the thing about this 3D model of the whatever is just it's just cool. It's not useful in a way, right? It's not
Mm.
good, but it's interesting, and maybe like you said, it's that future thing. Oh, in 5 years maybe you'll just go in, and I guess it's pleasant is the real point of this. It's just not loud. And not as expensive, I guess, because these little things are not as expensive, obviously, as
Mm.
MRIs are or something. And then people nowadays want to be scanned a lot. There's some car keys in there that got lost, and maybe they just want to know where they are. Who knows, right?
That's fun.
Anyway, I don't know if any of those things have any resemblance, but it is that idea of, if you're enabling things to happen quicker that are really hard, okay, that doesn't change. It doesn't change anything, right? That's just sort of more, in my mind, it gives us more time. But everything I've heard lately is that people are working way harder than ever, which seems weird.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's your feeling or not. I always think the idea is that you just have to pick your battles, right? Like there's only so
Yeah,
many hours in the day, but
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess maybe that's true. I mean, maybe we are working harder because now we have this intelligence that we can talk to, right? And it's not just the keyboard; it's the modality has changed, right? So maybe I mean, I wouldn't say I work harder. I work longer hours, but I feel like I mean, this is really cool stuff that I'm doing personally for me, right?
hmm.
So and now I have that modality that I can talk to. I can have a really kind of interesting conversation that otherwise would be, impossible. And I can come up with new stuff. And then, at the end of the day, probably my projects are not much faster than they would be otherwise. It's just that, hey, now I can have a knowledge graph here. I can have something cool here. I have do some knowledge, some knowledge representation there. I can do some cool math, compressions and all that stuff would be simply kind of like maybe spread out throughout the year, and now it's just part of everything, like every day. So in a way that's very positive, but I feel like this is kind of like a narrow very narrow sliver of what's going on.
Well, if we're going to go to the route of, hey, this super intelligence is going to be able to solve all these, ineffable problems, and I'm like, well, I will say that I've enjoyed more than anything understanding some of these problems, and they have to do with maybe physics, maybe math, I don't know, whatever people would consider hard, right? So just recently, building in New York kind of is famously collapsing, right? And to me, these sort of engineering issues are like, wait, didn't we solve all these issues like forever ago or something? Like it just seems
Mm,
weird that somehow we made a mistake, or miscalculated. And that's been true for hundreds of years, right? Like I think, if all the Apple stores fell down, it would be weird because Foster and Partners probably have done a lot of modeling to make sure that they're super light, carbon fiber, whatever they do, doesn't fall
mm,
over, I guess. But, if they collapsed, you'd be like, oh, well, that was a really risky design,
mm.
very unprecedented. So I guess it's fine that it failed over time. And I think we're much less tolerant of that, is what I'm getting at, right? I think we kind of imagine that the real world is pretty good, pretty figured out. You're I mean, even now I keep thinking of going from fiber, which was great, to 5G internet, which is much greater, right? So I'm going from wired to wireless, getting
Mm.
better. And all my lines now I just hang things on because I have so many lines coming out of my house. You know how that is.
Mm.
You're like you needed all these lines to transfer this stuff, and now you don't. And so, my biggest concern is, well, you get addicted to it. Um, it went out last week as well as my car broke and my TV broke. I think I had about four things break.
Perfect storm.
Perfect storm. And it's maybe the narrative is fine because I can go to GPT, like you just said, you've got a problem, you can go to GPT and get pretty good insight. My wife's doing it now when it comes to health insurance, right? I'm like, well, do you want to talk to a person or read a website? No, I would just go to GPT and let it do it,
Mm.
if that makes sense. But I do it because there's no cost. And it's like Google, yeah, we'll give you a keyword search for no cost, but we're going to advertise, right? And their
Well,
advertisement,
it's
yeah,
nominally free.
right. And we're used to nominally free, except we don't like skewing, right? We don't
Mm,
like to skew results to say,
mm,
oh, okay, well, all things being equal, you really should go to Aetna. You know what I mean? Well, that's
mm,
that's that's the wrong conclusion. I got, or that's a misrepresentation. But I don't know if you're watching the World Cup, but it just seems to me like, just advertising in general is kind of that imperfect science. Like, yeah, someone's got to pay for all this. This stuff isn't cheap. My mom was talking about the worst seats at the game, are $3,000 or something like that, just to be there. And you have to
Yeah.
watch on your phone
Yeah.
while you're there.
Yeah, I guess, there are real, soccer fans out there and real NFL fans, and yeah, yeah, it's hard to believe. But yeah, I guess what we got right now is kind of, maybe a situation where the models that will not only kind of give you, the provider, that is going to, maybe negotiate on your behalf. Though that's kind of the last stage where, everything is kind of nominally free and you can go there. Because the next stage is, I think, if they really have to kind of like, run every single new model through the government and kind of, run verifications and new types of harnesses, the price is going to go up, right? So perhaps, if the model that would not only give you the provider, but also cure you, because it's going to look at your blood work and it's going to find, oh, I mean, if you drink, like instead of 5 cups of coffee, just 1 cup of coffee, you're going to live, 50 years longer, right? Something like that. So if that kind of model is not going to be nominally free, right? This is going to be something that is going to be very, very expensive,
Hmm.
because I think that we are getting close to that kind of capability, right? So maybe the peptide therapy, right? The peptides that now is kind of the new big thing in healthcare. The Wolverine therapy, with
Oh,
peptides,
yeah, yeah,
quote
yeah.
unquote,
Okay.
that can kind of, instead of having a hip replacement, you will take some peptides and it's going to regrow your, joints, and stuff. That kind of stuff is going to be probably, very, very difficult, very expensive to actually manage through an AI that will have enough knowledge to do that. So I think we are kind
Yeah,
of entering
right.
the new era.
Well, and not to mention that its role, right? It doesn't have a therapeutic role yet, right? It's really
Mhm.
just there to be an information hub, and even at that, it is going to lie, which was still the topic of my thing, which is that it has to confabulate
Mhm.
for so many reasons. For, I guess, number one is you don't speak Spanish, so it has to formulate this answer in English. You see what I
Mhm.
mean? Like that,
Mhm.
these sort of things are like we kind of take them for granted. But I'm like, if the answer didn't make any sense to you, because I did talk to Claude recently, and maybe it was the newer model, and I don't know if this happens to you, but it apparently thinks I'm very bright because boy was it dense in its explanation
Mhm.
with even a couple of words I didn't know, and I'm kind of pride myself on having a decent vocabulary, right? So I'm like, where did you get the impression that I can understand this? And I guess in some ways it's trained itself that way. So if I was a 17-year-old high school physics student, I hope it would speak to me differently, which is what we never got from books, right?
Mhm.
You and I both read the book. You might have read the real book, the one that's meant for people who know what they're doing, and it's not very flowery and it states things very clearly or something like that. And I read the kids' version of that. I'm like, I want the
Mhm.
book that's written because I don't care, but I'm interested version. And both versions are fine, right? Neither is attempting to be uh, you know, uh, what would be deceitful, but hey, that so and so's calculus for beginners book is
Mhm.
a lot easier to understand than Newton or something, right? Like, I mean, you're not going to go read Principia Mathematica and try to understand math. Let's hope, but
Mhm.
somebody did. But they figured out how to say it easier. And this is where I think these advanced math, it's going to solve all these problems. Well, these aren't really problems. These are just conceptual, math theory crap, that doesn't really change much. It's just, I don't know, Fermat's theorem isn't like helpful. It was just a weird puzzle because these dorks, that's all they thought about, right? And also they're very competitive. I keep wanting to say, because AIs are not competitive is a big problem, because most of these really good ideas come from somebody being really pissed at somebody else's paper. I mean, I think Bohr and Einstein still were having it out. You know what I mean? Like, the conflict that arises from trying to understand something is sometimes more important than the actual results.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, we are talking about the principles of monasticism, where, kind of, it's not about reading the book, but it's about, looking at the concept, stopping and thinking about it, right? So yeah, I guess, yeah, I guess I agree. But there is a little bit of a twist now to kind of to your point, where people now beginning to start to analyze the J space of large language models, and
Yeah,
basically
J-space.
that's basically the internal soul, right? The thinking, the internal thinking of a model, right?
Mm-hmm.
J space come from basically the Jacobian transformation. That doesn't it's not very important. It's basically a matrix of probabilities again, right? That can be now interpreted as as with another model, as in and read the internal thoughts, how the AI thinks about stuff, and we're gonna
In
start.
English, let's be clear.
Well, yeah, the translation layer is kind of like yeah,
Saying.
I got the cynicism here, but yeah, I guess the thing is that now we're gonna be able to kind of look deeper into something that we couldn't do with human neural networks, which are very similar architectures kind of in general, right? And then people begin to start thinking about the superposition phenomenon, which basically means that, hey, maybe in a brain architecture, maybe in the human or neural network, there is the core kind of like steering committee of neurons that are kind of like making the decisions, like, hey, I'm gonna be a good person, right? Or I'm gonna be making a joke, or I'm gonna be doing something else. So there's kind of there's going to be, maybe we will find that there is this kind of like the grandfather or grandmother collection of neurons in a brain architecture that kind of has like the deciding kind of quality to it, and then everything else is kind of just kind of like a beautification of the thought, so to speak, where you're kind of formulating things, but the steering committee is somewhere sitting in a neural network. That would be an enormous basically insight into kind of like neuroscience.
Oh, I mean, I'm with. Well, I'm very into what you're saying, because I going back to liberal arts and making art, and like you just said earlier, which was a good point. Like, nobody it complains about time they spend in the studio. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mm,
fun. That's
yeah.
why you do it. And to others it may seem difficult, but whatever. You're choosing to do it. I'm actually surprised, and I do want to challenge all the J space people, is that. What you're talking about is eigenvectors and eigenvalues, right? So these are these things that are absolutely interesting, right? We've known about them forever. It's just that, why doesn't the J space, why isn't it in German, is now my question,
Mm,
because the language of science used to be German. So I was with some physics kids or physics students the other night, and we're talking about stuff, and
yeah.
we all agreed it's good to speak English now. That's all we said. It's like, well, it's really a big advantage that you don't have to learn German like my dad did in
Mm,
school in order to speak and to be accepted by the uh, tastemakers, or whatever, by the real scientists,
mm,
and and I do think there's something interesting that our models. I don't know how well they speak German. I'm sure it's fine. They don't care that they're speaking German. You see what I mean? But there are things
yeah.
in German that are very. It's a different way of communicating some things, especially, I guess, in science, since those two words, eigenvalue and eigenvectors, are, these are, I don't know. I always think of them as harmonics, right? It's the study of how do things cluster, you know, and like you said, if they cluster around, decision points, it's like, okay, yeah, then you're gating, right? Or you're filtering, and you do it. We all do, right? And how do you do it? Oh, I don't know. Just seems to happen that I ignore everything but my conversation with Jack, and then I go back to my day.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. You are too kind. But yeah, but I think that I mean the question of a translation, is kind of interesting, because it's probably the data sets that the AI was exposed, and many people say that it's kind of like an ultimate digital communism, right? We just grabbed everything that we could, if we can, and we trained the models based on that. But probably the probably, I don't know, maybe 60-70% of text maybe is in English on the internet. I don't know actually the statistics, but I'm pretty sure that German publications, German literature is not close to 50%. I'm pretty sure of that.
Maybe. Right. You're underrepresented. Sure. I mean, Tagalog and all those Malaysian languages are
Yeah.
probably, much harder. They just have one book of it. I
Mm.
remember in Japanese, I had my kanji book, it's like, is that all you need is a dictionary?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then kind of, if you think about, the Library of Alexandria, if it wasn't
Yeah.
destroyed, that would be kind of like a huge contribution. But one way or another, there's probably enough training set for the models to be very proficient in many, many
Well,
languages.
for us to not know the difference, I think that's the point. You still are
Mm.
talking to, like, it, as I said, it thinks I'm a little smarter than I really am, right? And I should just say, can you dumb this down a little bit? I want bullet points. But somehow it got into my mind that I like full paragraphs, which I do,
Mm.
but really dense. And you see what I mean? Like that kind of reading, I think everyone has said now is kind of on its way out. Like nobody reads that way anymore. And they just don't know
Yeah.
how to do it. They don't have the practice. And I can see that, I'm from advertising, man. I mean, we've been trying to dumb things down for a long time, not make things so complicated.
Yeah, and the writing as well, right? I mean, there's I don't know what's the usage of fountain pens, like I have on my desk, several of them, but yeah, that's probably also, several. Yeah.
Actually, a gift from my dad, the Montbank diplomat, used to sign many a treaty. Haven't used it in 20 years, but yeah, weird. But yes, yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I do agree. I miss the days where note taking. My good friend, he's a copious note taker, and it's just fascinating because it's like, oh wow, not only are your notes really, they look good, but it always is just like an artifact. But to me, I'm like, the problem is it's an artifact. I really don't go back and look at them. I just kind of use them to reinforce things, and that's fine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I have a very close relationship with my journaling, and
Good. Oh,
and
perfect then. Yeah.
the fountain pen is probably something that is kind of inherently related to that, right? I probably wouldn't be taking notes with a pencil or just an ordinary pen. It has to be all my notes, you know from forever, are always with fountain pens. So yeah, there's something to it, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
the
Oh,
form the
well,
form
fountain pens
factor.
are they're just nice. Yeah. I mean, they're, also it's like calligraphy or anything, right? It's like, you have to be a little bit mindful, rather than just scratching things on a piece of toilet paper or something.
Yeah. So the quantum leap in interfaces for me would be if I can kind of get an AI system to the level that can look at my notes that I'm scribbling, and kind of use it instead of the keyboard, right? Like if I'm programming or developing a system, I think we are getting close to that, because those frontier models that are kind of gonna solve the all the world peace problems and everything else will be kind of like much out of reach. But those kind of like character recognition, probably and I would be so much happier to use just my fountain pen, not the keyboard. I would say.
Hmm. Well, I mean, those have always been what can you call it? All the in my world, the input device is always been a big deal. So that's been an area of great innovation for ages, but recognition was never its goal, right? Like it was always just about capturing it for you. I'm always been or forever been a big fan of Mural for that reason, because it has the ability to be an infinite canvas rather than being a finite canvas. But when it comes to designing, I was always surprised people who worked for me really never just picked up a piece of paper and drew an interface. And to me, I'm like, well, they're not hard to draw, but I would spend more time, and I would always use pencil, by the way. I would spend more time in understanding spatial things like how much text could go somewhere. You see what I mean? Like you're kind of balancing things out, and it makes it very easy to do with a pencil, because you'll immediately see where things will go wrong. So I did it, in fact, because what I didn't found is when people cleaned it up, they removed the mistakes. Right. That's your biggest thing as you get into fidelity. You start to think like, well, we're not going to represent mistakes because they're just harder to make. They look more mistake-like. Whereas if you have too much text on a handwritten piece of paper, it doesn't look like a mistake. So I made a big deal to say like fidelity really matters. And maybe that's even a subtext of some AI work now that well, certainly it is with imagery. Like it's too much fidelity. That's all there is to it, right? Like you immediately it tells, because the fidelity is too high, that it's not real. Whereas somebody who makes something and it's slightly crummy, you can have a really good design that's slightly crummy if it's if it's real. It's like making a mistake in music. They were saying hearing about I think it was Neil Young recording, and they just said, okay, we're just going to record all the time. And so the problem is I don't want to know that we're recording, because then you start to perform, you start to do a different thing when you're recording than when you were just playing. Yeah. And I think that's where it's fun with AIs, right? Is I'm just playing, but I can go instantly in and out of that, right? Whereas before you'd have to set up a meeting and you'd have to put together a PowerPoint, and as you do quite well, you have to illustrate this to a non-interested audience, which is always fun, right? Like, how do I get you interested in this thing that I'm interested in? And LLMs, they don't have that cost. They're pretty much always interested in whatever you're interested in, and can usually pick up on your shorthand pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, in music, I think the jazz piano player, the one of the famous one, Thelonious Monk, he actually kind of made the style of a mistake, kind of incorporated it in his music. I mean, his music often sounds like he's making a mistake, right? Like he hit the wrong key on the keyboard, but actually he didn't, right? He was just playing. He's just creating sounds that were a little bit atonal, and I'm sure he would be able to play super clean if he wanted, but that was his music, right? Like maybe that is kind of creating a new kind of like a sound surface, that is slightly different, and he became a classic, right? So nobody was criticizing this for him. So but then if there was a novice player trying to kind of play a jazz piece, there would be mistakes that you would hear, and those will be different types of mistakes, right? That would be actually a real mistake.
Well, and it's all in their viewpoint, because a lot of times what would happen is that they would release this and nobody cares, right? That was, that's a fairly common thing among musicians, is that they hear that they play, and then people come and say how great they were playing, exactly this was recounted today of I played this too, and then I listened to myself afterwards and I couldn't believe how bad I was. And I'm like, what's wrong with people? How do they not know that I wasn't good at this and this and this part of this music? And that's, I think, why probably you and I and many others, are getting a little spoiled by LLMs, right? Because we don't have to imagine them being dumb, right? We don't imagine them not caring and have to be motivated to offer a perspective. And that's not human, and that's where I think that's where the collapse will come. So in terms of survival, just remember, humans will overestimate their fidelity. Let's call it, we'll go back to fidelity, right? Like, I'm doing really, really, really good work, except in somebody else's mind, you're wasting a ton of money, which is me looking at fusion, right? I'm like, you're just throwing money into a garbage pail, and that's, good for you, nice work if you can get it, right? But in the same measure, well, we'll see. We can go into the current news. I mean, I am kind of happy about DeepSeek figuring out, we just don't have to do this particular costly process, right? Like, we can kind of like cheat, and that's always fun, because eigenvectors and eigenvalues, they always cheat. That's their role, right? Like, you get away with less and get the same result.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost efficiencies could save us in the long term, is what I mean, from governmental control. Because if you just run the model locally, whatever, I just downloaded, God, was it Quen? Anyway, there's some new fancy model. Not that we need to go into modeling, but what models do you?
Well, I think one of the newer things is Gemma, right?
I think it's Gemma that I got. Yeah, because they have a 128-bit model. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, and then there is OSS that I'm also running locally, which is probably a little bit better than Gemma. So yeah, I mean, they are not not bad at all for a local computation that is even more nominally free than maybe some other nominally free online models. But yeah, I mean, if we wanted to kind of do a breakthrough with fusion, then there would be this thing that people maybe kind of don't think a lot about, which is the AI now can actually help us build simulations. So if we kind of start simulating certain problem or certain process, using AI, and then do research into that simulation to kind of like change things, tweak things, then that's kind of something that maybe has a potential.
Yeah, I guess here's my thing. We're on Earth. You don't get to do stuff here. That's the whole point of Earth. It doesn't let you do things that screw everything up in the cosmic order by design. It only allows it in certain situations. So I think, that we got uranium to blow up was kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you get uranium to blow up and then blow up some hydrogen at the same time, then you're like, okay, win-win, but you're still talking about unsustainable, because it's so violent that the universe does not like this kind of violence, right? It'll tolerate it over in the sun. And even then, have you seen solar winds? They're pretty bad. Like, it's not a pretty picture of stability. It's a very violent thing. And I think that's what I think is hard. Like, the idea that you can contain such things, is kind of the folly here, because everything you do will be corrupted, because that's what things do, right? Like, they don't want to behave. It's insanely violent. And also at the same time, okay, great, now you got it to work. Well, now what? You're going to build, like, these things cost like trillions of dollars. Like, it's not a low energy fix, is my point. low energy stuff, just put a solar panel on a roof. You know what I mean? Like low
Mhm.
energy stuff, it's boring, but hey, it's taking
Yeah.
advantage of stuff you'd throw away, basically. It's like we used to burn all the forests, right? I think that's what England did at one point. They just burned
Mm.
all their forests until they figured out, like, oh wow, we don't have any more forests. And that's bad, that's bad, right? Because you're like, hey, I mean, this stuff renews, but it doesn't renew as quickly as we use it. So I think the folly, and also, by the way, I think uranium fission is pretty good now too. Speaking of computer modeling, you can probably get some pretty good fission reactors nowadays.
Yeah, you do, right? I mean, there is
Yeah.
a problem what to do with the ashes, right? That you kind of
Well,
get
the
out of it.
waste is waste. We like to waste stuff anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, so apparently, I think in Finland, apparently they found a way, a genius way to kind of deal with this. You're just gonna dig a very deep hole
Very
and
deep.
put,
Yeah, it always works. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, Stanisław Lem, in one of his books, Summa Technologia, he was writing about exactly this issue, right? Like the stakes of making a mistake and the stakes of what always happens, which is like so there is a big screw up, and corruption and stuff. The stakes are going up, right? Because we are no longer dealing with sticks, we are no longer dealing with swords, we are dealing with enormously powerful, toys, and technologies, and the cost of a mistake will invariably go up, and maybe that's the great the great filter, right? Why we don't see other civilizations around. Maybe they are too far, but maybe they are just kind of like following the same path that is going to be not so pretty at the certain at the certain level of technological evolution.
Well, but let's also not forget weather, since we're under, that now. But back in the day, sorry, not too long ago, once you're burning all those trees, people forget that the world that most of us, must of our parents lived in was unrecognizably bleak and polluted, right? Like the thing is that none of this stuff was free. And I think it's even more interesting when we consider like uh, very difficult tasks like clothes washing and stuff like that. Well, you needed to wash your clothes because going out into the world was filled with dirt and soot and right, like
Mm.
the fact that we live in a fairly antiseptic world in many ways, right, and we're just used to it, makes these other things like nuclear waste or something like that seem more dire than they are. They are very dangerous, of course, but not if treated by clever
Mm.
people in clever ways, right? Like you can probably manage. Yeah, the mental model doesn't change. That we are not no longer breathing in lead. I don't know if you were around then, but probably remember all the cars were burning leaded gasoline because
Mm.
of the fun way it would keep engines from knocking. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, oh yeah, and here's just some science that literally probably killed and made people's brains not function properly, like mine. Because you were just around it constantly. In fact, did you
Mm.
know it was like some I think it was a archaeologist, paleontologist that was sitting there going through archaeological records and then suddenly found this layer of lead and like was like, wait a second. This is new. Like where did all this lead come from? And only that and subsequent um, smart people hopefully banned it for good reason. It's
Mm.
terrible, right? But you're going around maybe breathing in what do they have nowadays in terms of toxicity? Probably a lot of things that we just
Yeah.
don't really recognize because it's not a part of our sensory apparatus, right? We could
Mm.
see smog or we could go to those rave shows like you do all the time with all the mist in the air, and then breathe it in and not worry.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I do them all the time, at least twice a week. Yeah.
But we don't think of it as a health hazard, right? It's just like, oh, no, I don't know. There's things that are harmful. But as we try to mitigate that, it is interesting where AI will fall because again, it doesn't have to survive. It doesn't have to it doesn't have to pick a lane. It is a very weird perspective, to say the least, and it has to say things that you understand. So I think we're still at this, after all this time, you do have to survive, but we're still at the beginning stages, because all I can tell, and I think we both agree, like, it will change computing, and good riddance. Who cares? That's the great point. Nobody is like, oh my God, I remember the good old days. COBOL was so great. It was more like, well, at least I could ask a business person how they handled this process, which I do need to do to get our video posted, right? And how did you do it? And what programs did you use? And, it's like it could be read. That was probably its only value, right? Is it was readable to take something really complicated and get it done. And all we know nowadays is like, well, that's about the best you can do, right? Like it performs its job that you wanted it to perform. And now I'm afraid of like, well, OSs are the same way. Okay, we made these things so elaborately, but right now, look at me. I'm updating my LM Studio, right? Just because someone goes in and finds something wrong with it every month or so, or whatever, and they fix it, and then they release a new one, which is kind of fun. That's the thing, is we're always in a work in progress, right? It's not like, oh, that was the greatest. It was, having a Commodore 64 in its day was the greatest.
Yeah, that was the greatest. I mean, they're very nostalgic, and then the Amigas happened, and that was such a supercomputing craziness, having an Amiga, and then, there was movies like the Last Starfighter, I think, if I remember correctly, that were made with the Cray supercomputer, maybe one of the primary applications of supercomputers at that time.
Well, and our favorite scene in Star Wars, no one remembers, but when he gets into the little thing to shoot his little, gun when he's in the Millennium Falcon, on the screen was like a 3D printout and said, okay, you can fire now, and then he fires and it blows up. And in the day, that was the most incredible. Like in 2001, like it was showing you in real time what was happening on the screen, and that a computer was doing it was unknown and obviously all fake. But not obviously, it seemed like the future, right? That the things would even know what's going on. And now when I'm having my energy thing done, she's showing me the infrared profile of this area of my house, and I'm like, God, that's so weird. I can just see infrared now. Like that's just a thing you can do. But I'm not used to seeing infrared. So I don't really have any. I had to have it explained to me a few times, because I'm like, okay, and that, what does that mean again? Like what? So maybe it'll open our minds to a new way of looking at some things. That's always a plus, and maybe for next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mind opening LLMs? I don't know. Maybe.
Well, we're looking into their minds right now, so maybe we will find something.
It is true. That's why you have to do a lot of name dropping when you do a prompt. I use Euler way too much, because apparently Euler also got a letter once and came back a day later with some phenomenal proof and said, sorry, I'm blind in one eye and my fountain pen was out of ink, but I got this proof for you ready. So even back then, a lot of this was just because some random person wrote a letter, and that's when you get some crazy results. So poor Euler. Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah. Go fountain pens.
More fountain pens. And more conflict. That maybe we'll just have to have a adversarial AI to keep the others in line.
Oh, that will be easy.
Be the contrarian? I don't know. I think it would have a hard time. We'll see. Maybe that J space. It's like, be nice. Don't be evil. Maybe that's what it says in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, till next time, Jack. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thank you, Mike.